keep expecting something to happen. What's going to happen?
Okay, we are now live. Attendees are joining. And I'm going to go ahead. And we are already recording, so we are good. I'm going to mute myself now, but people are joining.
Okay. Attendees.
You can see them under attendees. You can see.
Okay, there's 810. We got Alex, Barbara, Kim, Nicole, Patrice, Sharon, Sherry, and Todd. Hey, Todd. All right, I feel like I'm supposed to be saying something. Everyone's coming in. Oh, there's Joni. Hey, Joni. Hey, Kim from Jack's Metro Credit Union. Yes, Self-Help Credit Union. You are totally working with one of our employees right now. She's doing great. She's working her butt off to get all her credit fixed. Hey, Sharon. That's awesome. Who else is here? Christina Rapace, Charles Johnson. Hi, Joni. It's so good to see you. Saw that you're selling lots of houses. It's great. And Jackie here. And maybe while we're waiting, if you want to, because I'm not very good at sitting in awkward silence. If you want to, in the comments, write how you know about Rethreaded. And that will give us some context for who's here. Gosh, we got 21 people. That's great. Mason, Dorsey, Eric Spitz, Rhonda Edwards, owner of Beachheads. Hey, Rhonda. I know we've done. And Alex, you know Renata. Gotcha. Shanna, you allowed us to come in and speak with your girls, some of them involved with our ministry, Equipped Ministries. Awesome, Shanna. I did not know that. That's great. Dang, we already got questions. And Patrice, you volunteered a couple times. Awesome. Everyone knows about Rethreaded from Renata Bryan. Okay, we're going to start in about 2 minutes. let's see. This is Sister Lucy from Our Lady of the Starseed Parish, which knows Renata and Stephanie. And yes, we have been to your parish many times. And you gave a grant that, funded a woman's first 6 months. So that was amazing. That's right, Joni. We met at BNI. I forgot about that. And Leela's our sister. She's in our circle of sisters. Okay, we have about 1 more minute. We'll let some more people get in. This is great. Because we are so time crunched, we're going to start right on time. Because there's so much good information that we want to cover. Okay, 12:02. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this started. So welcome to our first ever virtual Lunch and Learn, where we are going to be doing education from experts on human trafficking and what it is. And we did this one time last year in person at the warehouse. And it was, for me personally, one of the most impactful events that I had attended. And I learned so much at the panel that I facilitated. So I'm passionate about this event because once you hear from the people who know about human trafficking and are able to explain it from their viewpoint and their expertise, it gets me even more invested in what we're doing and the need that's out there and how we want to continue to give women opportunity to become who they're created to be. So just a little bit quick about Rethreaded. If most of you, I think, know about Rethreaded on here, but really quick, Rethreaded provides long-term employment for survivors of human trafficking through business. And then we couple employment with mental health services and care management. So we have group therapy classes. The care management part is helping women just like some women need to get their license back, their kids back, whatever is needed to reclaim their life. Rethreaded just walks alongside people to create opportunities for women to be able to reclaim their life. So that's the short of it. We have been in existence in 2012. We've helped over 60 women in direct employment. And we currently employ, I don't know the number now, 12 survivors right now, I think. So without further ado, I am going to introduce you to our panelists, 4 amazing women, 5 amazing women. So we're just going to start off. So first I want to introduce Stephanie Patton. Do you want to go, Stephanie?
Hi, I am Stephanie Patton. I am in the business development department at Rethreaded, and I work with the volunteers here, which is probably the bright spot of my week, getting to work with the community. Hey, Shanna. And, so I'm coming here today from the survivor perspective, and I'm just so honored to be a part of educating our community on human trafficking and what we're doing to help work with that problem here at Rethreaded.
Renata?
Hi, my name is Renata Bryan. I'm the Assistant Manager of Business Development at Rethreaded. So thankful that all of you are here. I work very closely with Kristin in business development, but I'm coming to you guys today in a whole new role. Like, I want to share with you through my lived experience. I was actually trafficked in the city of Jacksonville for 10 years. I'm a native of Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised, have my kids here, have roots. So just wanted to, this is where I come alive at. I want to educate you guys and just really share with you what human trafficking looks like in our city.
Lakeisha?
Hello, everybody. My name is Lakeisha Burton. I'm Assistant Chief with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and I've been proudly serving our community for about 22 years. I've always openly shared my trauma of being sexually abused as a child and the ripple effects of that into my teen years and my forever healing that takes place even as an adult. So I met Kristin years ago at the inception of Rethreaded, and it wasn't until my relationship with her and speaking with other survivors about my story in depth that I learned that as a teen, by definition of sex trafficking, that I unknowingly and unfortunately was a victim of this horrific crime. So I believe that there is power in sharing your truth and to heal and to empower and to help others. Education is key. So Kristin, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel and be a part of this vital conversation. So I hope to add some value by adding my personal experiences along with my professional experiences to this conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. And Erin Pruitt?
Yeah, my name is Erin Pruitt, and I'm a licensed mental health therapist in the state of Florida. My background is that I've been working for the last 9 years in some capacity with survivors of complex trauma and sex trafficking. Been a part of Rethreaded for 3 years, which is so exciting. Worked on the program side and developing a lot of programs, and then walking alongside with survivors in direct service and consulting for the agency as well. So I'm super excited to be here and super excited about this conversation.
And I am so honored to be able to facilitate this with these amazing, amazing human beings. So I want to give a little context before we go. So when we are talking, we're going to refer to when women are in trafficking, we're going to refer to it as the life. So sometimes it's called the game, but we're just going to use the life. So when we say a woman was in the life, how do you leave the life? It means how do they get into human trafficking, how to leave human trafficking. So we're just going to use that so everyone has that common language. And then as you go on and you have questions, we're going to put them in the chat. And then at the end, we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes and we can, we'll answer your questions at the end. So we are going to start off. So we're going to talk about on this panel how people are recruited into the life, how people, then what happens when they're in the life, and how do they leave the life. So we're going to start off today with a poll for the audience. So if we could pull up that poll. So the question is, what percentage of human trafficking cases are related to a person being abducted and kidnapped into the trade? And to answer, all you got to do is take your mouse and click the top button. So it's 5%, 25%, or 72%. And if you guys will just take, we're going to give you about 15 more seconds, is just go and click your answer. And this will probably be a long 15 seconds for me to be just sitting here quietly waiting, not my strength. Okay, about 5 more seconds. All right. Priscilla, what's the answer? You guys did great. Okay, so 54% had 5%, 25% said 25%, and 20% said 72%. And you guys did great. The correct answer is 5%. So only 5% of human trafficking cases involve abduction and kidnapping. So the actual definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to perform a sex act. And how it's portrayed in the media a lot is just really different than what happens. So what we want to explore now is the panel. If you guys could educate us on how traffickers use the force, fraud, and coercion to recruit people into the life. So maybe we'll start with Stephanie and then Lakeisha. What is the grooming process to enter the life? The grooming process, and how have you seen and experienced traffickers using force, fraud, or coercion to exploit a person's vulnerability?
Yeah, so in my experience of, entering into the life, it was kind of in like a different order, right? It was the fraud, coercion, and then force. So I was homeless in Jacksonville. I grew up at the beaches. And so, I came from a good life. I had good family support and community. And, I had drug and alcohol addiction, and different decisions kind of led to homelessness. And so I'd never experienced any of that. So I was super just alone and scared and didn't really know what I was doing or where I was at. And so the right person came along, and maybe not the right person, the wrong person came along and said, I can protect you. And so, I went along with that, and I felt like I was going to be safe and this person was going to protect me. And, I had this drug addiction, and, he had what I needed. And so I'll give you what you need if you do this. And then when, I came to a place where I didn't need that and I didn't want that and I was done with this, then the force came along and things just became very violent very quickly. And so that was my experience with the fraud, force, and coercion. And, it was my homelessness and my drug and alcohol addiction that really led to me being in the life.
Lakeisha, do you have anything to add to that from
Yeah,
law
just to say,
enforcement personal?
there's a grooming process in this. So many times there are these basic stages, and really the first stage that the trafficker looks to do is target the victim to gain their trust and get information, because they're trying to fill a need that the victim may have. And then when the isolation takes place, that's really when the abuse starts. But I think that's very important that people know that this can happen very quickly. So when these traffickers, they target this victim, it's typically somebody who is noticeably vulnerable. They're going through a hard time in their life. They're emotional, they're depressed, they have low self-esteem, they may be economically challenged, needing shelter and food and money. So those are definitely those stages.
And I mean, I love, what was I going to say? We'll keep moving. What is, so in the media, like what Lakeisha shared and what Stephanie shared, often what is portrayed in the media all the time is like a young girl with a hand over her mouth. And it's just, it is not, from everyone's experience here, it's not like that. So maybe Renata first, and then Aaron, you guys can say, what is something about the recruitment process that you think our audience should know that is different from what is out in the public?
Yeah, so I also see the social media pictures with the hand over the mouth, the duct tape, handcuffs, and a lot of people think of the movie Taken, where the woman was like kidnapped and her dad was going to come, Liam Neeson was going to come and save everybody. But in my case, it wasn't like that. Like, I feel like a lot of the coercion, the fraud played a major role in that, because I trusted him. Like, my trapper actually earned trust in me first before I even knew, I mean, months into it, before I even knew what he was and what he did. And he kept me there because he literally took everything from me first. So in the grooming process, I lost everything. And then when it come down to where I realized what was going on in my life, now it's too late. Like, I can't leave. My mom did not speak to me anymore because she thought I was schizophrenic, because of conversations he had with her secretly. And then my kids were gone. I mean, I had no friends, nowhere to go. And then when I would try to leave, he would come and get me. And the violence was so real. So he's actually, my trafficker actually threatened my children one time with a gun. Once I did leave from him one time, and I got away and I was free. I had to go to jail to do it. But when I came home, like, I was like, I'm free. And then he showed up at my house with a gun, and my children were at the home. And so at that point, it was, I'll do anything as a mother to keep my family and my children safe. And so I thought, like, this is my destiny. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I went with him to kind of protect everyone else. And so it kept me from, like, that's what kept me there and kept me from leaving, is the fear that he instilled in me.
And Aaron, what can you speak to in the recruitment process? So Aaron, as a mental health professional.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we could talk for hours about the recruitment process and the psychology behind that, but really I would take a little bit of a different angle and invite us to step back. And that's to actually step back into an encouragement to you. And that's for you to consider and think through your perceptions and where these perceptions came from. Because I think that's really, truly where the work begins, is in looking at our own beliefs about what we believe the recruitment process to be, and who we really believe and who we perceive to be at the most risk. I think it's really important to land in, like, a space of openness, right? And curiosity, because I think that's what shifts our community to a willingness to accept the possibility that, hey, the way that I might be thinking about this and perceive the recruitment process, it might be accurate, but it also might be different than what I've imagined it to be, or it might be different than what I believe it to be based on, movies that I've seen, or information I've seen, or media that I've seen, right? And so I think for me personally, I can speak to one specific example of this, and that's the assumption, I heard in a lot of training that I went to, the assumption that people that were going to be at risk were always identified as, okay, they've probably been through childhood sexual abuse. And although we find that to be very true and accurate, in a lot of ways, this is certainly a factor. There's way more factors than that. There's so many additional factors. And one of them specifically that I have seen is grief and loss. And I think that's something that our community hasn't always identified as a risk factor. And so I would just invite us, when we're thinking about the recruitment process, to first think about coming back to, okay, how did I get to where I am in believing what I believe, and really taking a step back and looking at that, and then being open to additional possibilities.
And maybe we can just, we're doing great on time. So maybe we can just explore this, and I'll put in a question that there is often this, and this is to everyone, anyone who wants to respond, is that there's often, I've had someone say to me, oh, you also help women who had a choice. Like there's this idea of it behind choice. And if there's any kind of personal choice in it, then it's not deserving of help, compassion. I mean, there's like this very strange line kind of that I see when people are processing this. And maybe, so we talk about choice a lot at Rethreaded. If anyone wants to speak really quick to this choice to enter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my very, I'm very passionate about this and the idea of choice in this, because this was something that I struggled with for a very long time. To insinuate that somebody has made a bad decision or a bad choice is to just kind of imply that there was a better decision to make. And so when we're in survival mode, when I am trying to survive, and when I am homeless, or when I am alone, when I am afraid, when I am economically dependent upon somebody, when I am just trying to survive and I'm using the only tools that I have to survive, like it's just, and then even the idea, I think this got brought up last year as well, was what about the women who choose to prostitute themselves? There doesn't necessarily have to be a trafficker. The purchaser is the exploiter. You have a vulnerability, you have a need, and the person people are not for sale. Sex is not for sale. So the person who is purchasing the sex is the exploiter. And so this idea of choice is just like, we are saying that there's a better decision to make, and there's not always a better decision to make. I am making the best decision I can with what I have at this moment in time. And so, I think kind of like what Aaron was saying is like stepping back and looking at why we believe that we have the whole picture, and why we believe that we know, what is exactly going on. So.
And what I would add, I'm just sitting here taking notes. So I think that this is one of the biggest misconceptions, that victims choose or want this life. So people need to know that the vast majority of them do not want to be there. That is just a lie. So when you look at poverty, homelessness, lack of resources, vulnerability, and especially the violent manipulation that plays a huge role in this, it's just, people need to know that these traffickers they're con artists, they are criminals, and sometimes coercion is very, very subtle, and it's difficult to get out. So I agree with everything y'all are saying.
Yeah, and I'll real quickly speak to that as well, because Stephanie, I don't think I could have said it better. Like, is there a better choice? Because by the time, I always reflect back to this, and I heard it one time before from another survivor when I went to her seminar, and she says to me, or she says to everyone, she said, think back to every little girl that you've ever asked what they want to be when they grow up. And you tell me one that has ever said, well, I want to be a prostitute, or I want to be a porn star. Like, it doesn't happen. They want to be veterinarians. They want to help animals. Like, usually at them young ages, they don't say, I can't wait to grow up and sell my body and have men abuse me and whatever. So I think, like, going back to that, and then like reflecting back to what Stephanie said, everything was literally gone before I even knew where I was at, before it even came to like me to even make it a choice on anything. I had no other choices to make. Like, that was it. I didn't have any family. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a house anymore. All of my property had been put in storage, and I couldn't even get into my storage shed because I was told it was being paid for and it wasn't. So like, I literally lost everything. I had no clothes, nothing. What I had was what I had. And he was providing all of that for me. And so it was like, if I go to leave, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So.
Thank you guys. That was super, I mean, because it's almost the trafficker twist. It's almost like in trafficking, the idea of choice is also twisted. And I hear also women a lot, and from you guys, is that it turns into shame. and like disempowering of a person's ability to even feel like they have a choice.
Absolutely.
Okay. You guys are awesome. Okay, so we want to then we're going to switch a little bit. So once women are in the life, and we're going to do another poll. So if you could pull up that poll. So how much money do you all think sex trafficking, this is just sex trafficking, makes globally? So this is everywhere in the world. So is it 150 million, 2 billion, or 99 billion? All right, another 5 seconds and all right, Priscilla, what's the answer? 99 billion. So 54% of you put 99 billion, 39% 2 billion, and 7% 150 million. So the correct answer is $99 billion is made globally from the exploitation of people's vulnerabilities. So, and we're using this stat right here to show you that people make money off this business, and traffickers are very motivated to recruit and keep, we're just going to say women, children, boys, but for our sake and our expertise, we're going to just say women. So they're very motivated to keep women in life because they are making tons of money off the business of trafficking. So what I want to talk to you, the panel now about is, so once a woman is in the life, how do traffickers typically keep her there? And can you guys kind of give us a picture? And we'll start with Renata and Stephanie, and then maybe Erin, you can share from like a mental health perspective as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think this question actually goes back to what I was saying before. I was given a lot of promises in my experience. I mean, my mom had sent my children to live with their father. It broke my heart. I didn't know where they were. And I was always given these promises that, oh, don't you want to get the kids back? We're going to get lawyers. And don't you want to buy this house? And don't you want to get a car? And don't you want to, there was always these false promises that was constantly given to me. And then there was like, oh, okay, so I can either believe that or I can hold on to the fear that's going to come with if I try to leave. And several times I did try to leave, but I was already wrapped up in like this underground world that is going on with human trafficking, to where the only people I knew were other traffickers. Like, it was other people doing this. And so I stayed with him because it was what I knew, but it was also like I said before, there was really nothing else to do. And I think he held on to me in ways of like making those promises and saying he was sorry and, oh, this is going to end. It's only temporary. Like, we're going to have this big house. And I saw the money coming through. So I was like, oh yeah, there's hope. Like, there's a little bit of hope, like just that mustard seed of hope that one day this will all change and it'll be different. And after 10 years, it was still the same thing. He was still giving me the same, the same false promises and stuff like that. So
do you have some?
Yeah, I agree, like with what Renata's saying. And I think what she was saying a few minutes ago about how, everything had been taken from her was one thing that kind of kept me wrapped up, is because like all of my things were held by this person, right? Like this particular person. I just distinctly remember, every once in a while my trafficker would show up at my hotel room off Arlington Expressway, and he would pull up and I would rifle through his trunk to get my clothes. And like, those were the clothes I had to change in, and they were all in the back of his trunk all the time. And he just had all of my things, and I had no family. Even though they lived across the bridge, they didn't want anything to do with me. And, I had nowhere to go. I had this addiction, there was some shame, not some shame, it was all shame. And I just, I had this drug addiction. I was just drowning it out constantly. Just how far away can I get from everything that's happening? And, and so another, and I just was just thinking of something, and how, and here's another one, kind of like to what Renata was saying, is sometimes things were fine. Like sometimes he was nice to me, and sometimes, you know, it wasn't always bad. And, you know, and it felt like that, you know, it felt, I had multiple traffickers because I would run from one person and then another person would find me and exploit me because I was so vulnerable and I was so scared and I was so alone. And, you know, I just needed somebody to like help me. And I had been dependent upon men my entire life, you know, before any type of exploitation. And so, you know, I would just, another one, and, you know, some of them were the boyfriend type that I thought was actually like my boyfriend, but this is what I did to make income. So we come back to that thought of choice, and this is my choice, and this is what I'm doing to make my money. And, you know, and I'm not understanding or realizing, you know, all of the things that are on the back end of this, because this is my life and this is just what it looks like. And, you know, it isn't until I got out of the life that I started to see just how distorted all of it was and how disturbing all of it was, because this was my normal. Men running the show was my normal, and having them to turn to and depend on was my normal. And, you know, just surviving, you know, became my normal, and the violence just became normal, and the abuse became normal, and just surviving that was normal. And it wasn't, yeah, leaving wasn't even something I super thought about for a long time, Renata.
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quickly too, there's also a lot of like background noise, which is like the trafficker saying, oh, what are you going to do? Call the police? What are you going to do? They're just going to lock you up. You know, if anybody finds out, you're going to jail. You're in this with me. We do this together. So there was like that fear that I can't trust the police officers. I can't trust anyone in law enforcement, DCF, like anybody like that. They are against me. They're not for me. And they're never going to believe me. They're going to think I'm lying because I'm the one out here doing it. And they're going to think that I chose this life. And this is just, I'm just a drug addict. I'm just, you know, out here doing this. And the same with like my family and my friends are like, nobody likes you. You're like, look, your mom doesn't even talk to you anymore. Your kids want nothing to do with it. You don't even know where your kids are. Like what a mother you are. Right. And so like all that, you know, just putting all that guilt and shame on me to where I started to believe like his words. And I was like, you know what, you're right. Like, where is all my friends? Why didn't anyone come looking for me? Why isn't my mom here? Where are my children? You know, why aren't the cops helping me? 10 years. I mean, and it was all because like, it was a fear. My trafficker was actually investigated for almost 4 years before they closed the case on him, and they came in and rescued us. And it was because we would not talk. We were scared to death to talk. We couldn't build a case. Like they wanted to so bad. They knew they had one, but they couldn't build one because we would not speak up and say what was happening to us out of fear. And so I think that is also like something that keeps us there, because we start to believe his lies.
Thank you, Renata, Stephanie. And I'm going to try to overlap that, what you guys have said, because you've really spoken to it already. But so much is really happening psychologically, right? Like on one hand, the traffickers are using behavioral principles, and they're using intermittent reinforcement and intermittent punishment in order to keep the people that are underneath their control in a constant state of fear. And so that really impacts their neurobiology and the psychology. Traffickers are using tactics, and those tactics are impacting that person's brain, that person's body, the full physiology of that individual. And so much is not just happening to that person, but on a neurological level, right? Like the neurobiology is literally shifting, and on a psychological level. So that's on the trafficker side. And then on the individual side, they're in trauma and kept in a constant state of trauma. And so that has a profound impact on that person's psychology and where they're at in that moment, right? And what they're experiencing. And then also to layer that with, okay, what options does that individual know of, if any exist at all? So even if, it's kind of like, even if, where would I go? Even if, what would I do? Even if, then what are my options? And so really at every level, people are utilizing against, right, the things that could work for us against individuals to keep them really in spaces of desperation and in trauma.
So good. So I know people want to know this because Stephanie, Renata, you've shared in life and what's happening from a mental health perspective, but from the outside, and people always ask us this, what are the signs of human trafficking and what can I do? So maybe Stephanie, Renata, if you want to share something, and Lakeisha, you can share from like law enforcement. Is it possible to see signs? What should people be looking for, etc.?
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'll
you start.
Okay. So that one's always actually, and as a survivor, like it's very tricky for me. I mean, there are a few things like not making eye contact with people, not having a social life, and things like that. But in my experience, like I was sold over the internet. We lived in hotels or apartments, and I was sold over the internet. So if you saw me, I was driving a Chrysler 300 or whatever car was like, you know, the new at that moment. I wore Louis Vuitton, Gucci, like really name brand products. So if you saw me out in Bay Meadows or Ponte Vedra or Sawgrass, like I blended. Like people just thought that I was part of the neighborhood. And so it was really hard to track me. But one thing I can say that was like a normal for us is that it was always the same group. And when I was put into trafficking and I met my trafficker, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. I was part of the PTA. I was my son's kindergarten homeroom parent. And I was very involved in the schools and the community and our church and like things like that. And then I just went missing. And so I think like things like that, like if someone's going through, if you notice someone is going through, they have this routine, whether it be a neighbor or whoever, and then all of a sudden they just stop, like question it. Either way, question it. It might not be trafficking, but it could be something else. And like people don't just stop doing all of that. And so I think when it comes to like trying to identify one, if you're not really looking hard for it, in my mind, it was really hard to see. I mean, 10 years. I worked for the same man 10 years in the same city, and it took someone at a gas station to get a crush on one of the girls and ask her to date him. And she finally told him what she was doing and that she couldn't date him. So that was like 10 years. Nobody saw it. Nobody saw what was going on with me.
Yeah, and I think like almost like the opposite of Renata, I was like hidden, right? Like I was not out and about and roaming the streets. I never stayed in one place too long. I have stayed in every hotel from, you know, Southside Boulevard to Airport Road. I mean, I was gone. Like you saw me one day and I was gone the next day, and I was just like inside. And one thing that I would do, and one thing I remember, that just kind of like is something that's always kind of stuck with me, is I remember sitting in front of this vanity mirror one day for, I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many hours I sat there and just straightened my hair and put on makeup, because I knew that if the more I covered it up and the better I looked on the outside, you wouldn't know anything was happening to me. And so I think that there's almost like this cloak that's put over. And so identifying somebody who's experiencing trafficking is really, like Renata was saying, is like a tricky thing to do. You know, I think, like she was saying, more coming from a personal perspective, I disappeared off the face of the earth. I was there one day, I was gone the next. No Facebook, no, I didn't do Twitter, but no Instagram. Like, you know, I was just gone. There was no family connection. People who had known me my entire life, I crossed the ditch. If you're from the beach, you know, I crossed the ditch and I didn't go back for 7 years. And, you know, it's things like that. It's where did she go? And so I think if you're going to identify somebody that's being exploited, it's probably going to be somebody that you know, and it's probably going to be somebody that you have an intimate relationship. And if you see a decline in their mental health, if you see a decline in their life, asking those questions and seeing that, and then, you know, there are people that you can see, you know, that are walking down, you know, the streets that are familiar to us in the city of Jacksonville, Phillips Highway, and you know, Arlington Expressway. We can see those, and it's like a see something, say something type deal. You know, we see it and we want to look away because we don't want to see it in our city, right? And instead of doing that, why don't we see it and say something, acknowledge it? And it's just one phone call, right? I take 2 minutes away from my day to make a phone call and say, hey, I think somebody needs some help. and it doesn't hurt you. And at the end of the day, it may not hurt them either. Like, so it's 2 minutes out of your life to just say, this girl might need some help. I saw her around in this general area. So.
What about you, Lakeisha? What are you?
First of all, I love what she said. See something, say something. I say that every single day. That is so very important. But I do want to say that we have come a long way in law enforcement from when I started 20 years ago in terms of training on this specific topic. I think for me, I've always had this unique capability to connect with victims because of the trauma that I experienced, but that is not the story for all officers. So just so the viewers will know, in 2019, Florida State Statute 943 was created. It's a statute that requires all law enforcement officers to have 4 hours of training to be able to identify and investigate human trafficking cases properly. So there's so many different warning signs, but some warning signs could be physical injuries or abuse. And also, if during an interview with a victim, if we see where they're trying to have avoid eye contact, or there's a lack of social interaction, some may have lack of official identification. They may live at the place where they work at. Some of them may have untreated sexually transmitted diseases. So the list goes on and on. But I think that from a law enforcement perspective, this training is so very critical and valuable because it teaches the officers to be aware that they may encounter human trafficking that look like another crime that is masking human trafficking, such as peddling, shoplifting, prostitution, domestic violence, sexual assault or battery, or even drug profession. So training is very critical.
And right here in the chat box, we just shared the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Polaris. So you can call that number in the chat box, and that is connected to a national system that will be funneled back down. There's the non-emergency police line, and you can correct me, Lakeisha, that I was told one time, if you're gonna report a non-emergency and you suspect human trafficking, try to get a name and a license plate. And you can do it anonymously. So like Stephanie was saying, and you guys were saying, like, you can call and leave an anonymous tip. And then if someone's in danger, call the police. I think all of us have had something where someone will like text us and be like, I think I'm seeing human trafficking. I think someone's about to get, I'm like, call 911, like call the police.
Absolutely. Let me just say this too, Kristin, you're absolutely right. A lot of times people will say, well, I didn't want to waste y'all time, or, I felt like I was being nosy. And I tell people, we work for you. We are here to serve you. So give us a call. You can remain anonymous. And when you call, give us as much detail as possible, because we will respond. So it's very important that don't feel like you're wasting our time, or that very thing that you think is minimum or not important, that call can save somebody's life.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to keep moving. We're going to talk about freedom from the life. So we have a poll question, and it is, what percentage of Rethreaded employees were trafficked? Here we go. What percentage of Rethreaded employees were trafficked in Duval County? 50%, 68%, or 100%? And we're going to do this one quick because we still got a whole topic left and questions. So I'll give 5 more seconds. Okay. Can you give us the answer, Priscilla? All right. 46% said 100%, 42 said 68%, and 12% said 50%. And the correct answer is 100%. That 100% of women who have worked at Rethreaded have been trafficked right here in Duval County. So it's happening in our neighborhoods, in our hotels. So knowing it's here, it's not a myth, it's not made up, it's happening in our cities. Once a woman, and you've heard how women get in the life, how they get kept in the life, and then getting out of the life. So what most people think is that when a woman is rescued, suddenly she's rescued, that's great. But in reality, it's just like the start of her journey. like to freedom. So maybe we'll start with Stephanie and Renata. What are some barriers that you had to overcome as you were leaving the life?
Yeah. So I didn't have family. I had no friends. I was completely homeless. I had no money. I had nowhere to go. I had given birth to a child while who had subsequently been put into foster care because I was homeless. And so, now I'm dealing with DCF. So to the best of my ability, being homeless and addicted to drugs. And so, I went so yeah, that's what I was battling. I was battling homelessness. I was battling drug addiction. I was battling DCF. But it was knocked down one by one, just taking one step at a time, but just having no community, having no family, having no money, having nowhere to turn and nobody to call. And those were my biggest barriers coming in, and then just having no idea how to live, no idea I was talking to, a friend of mine the other day and just really acknowledging that, for the first time in my life, like I've paid my own car insurance for, these past few years. Like I've never before in my life paid my own bills, and paid my own car insurance, and just did all these things. I was always dependent upon another person. So having to really learn how to live as an adult was a huge thing for me. But I would say the biggest thing, the biggest barrier was homelessness without community and family.
Yeah. And I think, I know. So for me, it was everything. I mean, I had been missing from society for 10 years. I hadn't had a job. I had no education around, even getting a job. I had a high school diploma that I got in prison. And I had a criminal record. I had drug addiction. What do you say when you apply for that job and they say, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? Oh, well, that's not something that you want to talk about over. So I had severe anxiety. I had mental health issues. I had trauma. I didn't identify. I still, even after everything that happened, I still had a hard time identifying and believing that it wasn't my choice. And I actually called the investigator who investigated my case crying. And I was like, you said my life would be different. I don't have anywhere to live. I'm couch surfing. I'm literally 2 minutes away from getting kicked out of my home. Everyone that is around me is they keep relapsing. And so then I'm having to leave that house and go to this house just so I can stay sober and just so I can be safe. And I have no safety. Still haven't seen my kids, still haven't talked to my mom. And one job that I had, I was cleaning offices, corporate offices. And the lady told me that I had to work the midnight shift because her fear was that some of her clients might've been my buyers. And she just didn't want, them to feel awkward. And I believed her. I was like, you know what, you're right. Nobody should see me. I will work the overnight shift, which was already a trigger and very traumatic for me because that's how I met my trafficker. And then I was introduced to Kristin. I mean, because I did not want to be, just a charity. I didn't want to be just somebody that was just left out there. Okay, you're free. Good. Bye. See you later. Okay, now what do I do? And it wasn't until I met Kristin that I finally felt wow, somebody does love me. I can be an asset somewhere. And so through those barriers, pushing through those barriers and having someone there for me with the program at Rethreaded, I was able to get an expungement of my records. So now I can go get a really big, a job where I want to start a career in if I choose to. And that's the thing, I have a choice today. I have that choice. I've got an expungement. I got, the day that I was rescued is my sobriety date. I never touched another drug since the date that I was rescued. And that is huge because, I don't have to carry all that with me, and I've got my kids back. I got my own house. I'm in college. I bought a car. I got a license for the first time in 13 years. And Erin let me drive her car to take the driving test. And I was so embarrassed and shameful even at that moment, because at 36 years old, I have to go take a driving test. How embarrassing was that? I had never done it before. And I was like, I need to borrow somebody's car. But it's people don't think about things like that, like basic human needs that we have to live, like a safe place to lay my head down at night, food to eat. I rode a bus for 2.5 years for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night just to get to work, because I wanted I found a company that said yes, like, and not only will we hire you, like we'll build you, we'll go with you. So I think that's where like Rethreaded has played such a huge part of like my life change. Things that I know that I would not be where I'm at today right now, you know, if it wasn't for them. And so like the barriers were nowhere to live. Don't nobody want to rent to someone who has a record and all that trauma and baggage. I was actually told that when they saw that I had a prostitution charge on my record. The lady called me back and said, hey, your credit report, everything looks amazing. It looks great, but we saw that you have a prostitution charge and we just don't want people like that living in our community. And she hung up in my face. And it was just so triggering. Like I had to call Aaron and them and say, hey, look, like this just happened. What do we do now? We advocate. That's what we do. We start advocating when we see the barriers. So lots of barriers. I mean, it's literally things that people take for granted and it's normal for them, but they're denied access in so many levels whenever they're first coming out of trafficking, and they have so much baggage that a lot of people just don't want to deal with.
And Aaron, maybe you can talk real quick about, when survivors come out, mental health needs.
Yeah, for sure. The mental health needs of a survivor to me are really simple and complex. There's a simplicity to it and a complexity to it. And I think the simplicity is that just like all of us, there's a need to be attuned to, there's a need to be seen, there's a need to be heard. I always tell people, I'm like, you don't have to have a master's degree to listen. You don't have to have a master's degree to see someone and to hear someone. And so I think that's the simplicity of it. I think the complexity of it is in the level of care that individuals really need in terms of the longevity and the consistency of care is huge because they've come from layers of trauma and long-term trauma. And so the impact of that is not going to be unraveled in a day. I would always say that I always like, this is like the thing I'm passionate about is we need excellent services. I always hear, we need more services. We need more services. I'm like, yes, that would be amazing to have more services. And we also need appropriate services. We need quality services. We need services that people are providing excellent care. And so I guess that's like my personal passion is I'm like, I don't need 20 more people. I need people who will show up with excellence and know exactly what is needing to be provided. I really, truly believe that starts with listening.
And real quick, Lakeisha, what do you see, how do you see our city meeting survivors where they're at? If you could just speak from that side. If you would like
I think that the fact that human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing criminal industry worldwide, I think locally and abroad that we need more prevention and prosecution and protection for our survivors. So, but I do want to acknowledge before it's over, I just want to acknowledge the survivors and you, Kristin. Thank you for just your vulnerability and authenticity and your courage. My heart is full. And I know that to do this, it is, it's a lot and it's hard. So, but I also know that when you come out, it's both healing and liberating. And I know that somebody is inspired today. So I just want to say, God bless you all. And from a law enforcement perspective, what you all do helps us. And it gives us an extra tool in our box. So when we encounter individuals like this, now we have a resource. Now I can say called Rethreaded. And I think we need more of those resources, but not only have them, but have them accessible to law enforcement as well.
I know. So we're going to take some time now to do some questions. We probably have about 7 minutes for questions. I see one in the screen right now. And maybe you guys could talk about this. Please talk about the ways in which Rethreaded connected with those who need your services. So maybe you could you guys could talk about how we as a company help women get connected. I love what you said, Stephanie, about your lack of, you always talk about community. So maybe I'm asking a leading question now. So speak, ways that Rethreaded helps connect people with what they need.
I just want to talk about the women at Rethreaded and the way these women get connected to Rethreaded and then in turn get connected to the services that they need through Rethreaded. So the last round of women that got hired at Rethreaded, those 7 women came in here and they sat down for their first day, each of them having an established relationship with a survivor who already worked here. So this is women don't leave the life to just leave it behind. They leave the life and they reach out a hand to help another woman out of it. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then, Rethreaded just does an incredible job, and Aaron and, the program team here just does an incredible job at, I know, tears here too, Angela, tears here too. I can see the chat the whole time, and you guys are wonderful and beautiful, kind words and great questions. But they just do an incredible job at working with, members of our community to just offer resources to these women. Because when you want to help, and we see that a lot, once people start to know and identify, what's really happening in our city, they want to use their resources to help the women here in our community and outside of our community. And the biggest question we always get at the end of a lot of our lunch and learns is, how can we help? And so, I think that Rethreaded does an excellent job in working with those community partners to help make sure that the women that are here get all the resources that they need. And not even just the women that are here, Aaron is always a phone call away for anybody that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, and when I speak to that, so I think like going back, I've been at Rethreaded for almost 5 years. I have been graduated from the Rethreaded program for about 1.5 years. And I remember when I started there, it was like 7 of us, and just watching like this program evolve. But I think recently, like one of the best things that Rethreaded did was we hired a holistic coordinator. And so like her job is to find resources, because here we are, we have these people who are like, hey, I got a girl, she needs somewhere to go. And we have like a community resource list, right? But Rethreaded provides employment wrapped with wraparound services. And like part of those wraparound services is not that we house women and we do this. It's more, we find community resources and people out there that says, hey, we will use our business for good. Yes, we will help. Yes, we will do this. We can offer this to you. And so then we create like this program based off of like what is there and what is needed. Because like I said earlier, little things that like people take for granted, just having a driver's license, like was hard for me, because I'm riding a bus. Not only did I ride a bus for 2.5 hours, I went down the same exact road that I was trafficked in every day to and from work. And like, that was really hard for me, like having to ride that bus. So like our goal setting, like setting goals and then having someone hold you accountable, having someone cheer you on, having someone walk with you when you hit that brick wall and you can't get past that brick wall and you're like, man, and then here comes Kristin in the sideline saying, I know somebody, and it's like, wow, like that's really powerful. But I think in our city, in our community, it's like providing hope, like providing tangible hope and letting our community see what Rethreaded is doing with the women and like the growth with the women that are there, and then allowing our community to be a part of it. Like we're not like a shut door, like our doors are open. We're very transparent with what we do with our women, and we're very transparent with what services that we need, and we're not scared to ask. Like having that, I think is like huge. Like I mentioned earlier, Erin went with me to drive her car. She didn't have to let me drive her car. I was scared to death, but she let me do it, and it's a woman going with me at 37 years old. I didn't know how to enroll in college, but a woman went with me, and Rethreaded was like, hey, go, a survivor mentor just took me there. So it's like, it's not just a job and it's just not services. Sometimes it's like life. We don't know how to live life right now, and we don't know what to do with life. Because there's a difference in, like, I tell Erin, there's a difference in like crisis and life. And sometimes those women, like when we first come, everything is crisis. I get a flat tire, I'm calling the mental health therapist. No, call a tow truck. Like call a tow truck. But we don't, because we don't know what to do. And I think just like walking with these women and like we show them like, hey, this is the difference. And like, this is because we're so lost in just gone when we first get there. We don't know the difference between life and crisis because our life has been in crisis for years. So crisis is what we know. So everything's crisis. And I think Rethreaded does an amazing job with like walking with the women and teaching them. And then that begins to build like independence and confidence and letting women break them shame, break the guilt. I don't have any guilt that I don't know how to cook anymore because today I know how to cook a little bit, you know, and it's because of like the community and people that I've met at Rethreaded has taught me how to, if I don't know how to do it, how to ask and how to look. So I think that's really powerful.
So can I add one thing really quick, one line,
yes.
and it's a line that I'll just say it, it's do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And so often we think about what we cannot do, our barriers. And instead, if we can flip that around and go, okay, what tools, what do I have in my hand? What could be utilized? What can I provide? Maybe it's an hour a week. Maybe it's opening up my home. Maybe it's, you know, mentoring. There's so many ways that people can help. And so I really encourage you to think through that.
And this is a great, you're setting me up, Erin, because I want to talk to people about what they can do. And someone said they were in Arizona and they were like, how can we help from Arizona? And I'm like, of course, one day we'd love to be in Arizona, but right now, if you shop with Rethreaded, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, holidays, birthdays, we are a purposeful gift company. If you want to help give women a new chance at life, shop at Rethreaded. Everything is made by survivors somewhere around the world or right here in Jacksonville. So every time you purchase something from us, you're changing a life. You can make a donation. All our donations go directly to survivor services that we provide. Someone was talking about the Circle of Sisters here. It's our Women's Giving Circle. And then our biggest ask of today is we're having our gala on February 27th, and we are going virtual. So tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., you're going to get an email in your inbox that tells you how to buy a gala box. And it's filled with survivor-made goods. And what we'd like you to do is host a little mini gala with your bubble. And we're going to have a gala experience, and it's going to be live streamed on Facebook, and it's going to be live streamed on YouTube. And you can gather your people around, and we're going to have, I'm making this up now. It's called Mukti Magic, which means freedom in Bengali. So we'd love to sell out of boxes. We'd love to get your friends. We're going to have a silent auction that's a week long, and you can participate all week long on your phone. And then we're going to have a live auction at the gala. So there are tangible things that you can do today that are socially distanced gatherings. Thank you, at your personal comfort level. Thank you, Priscilla, for giving me words. I get a little excited when I start talking about Mukti, but even little things like where you shop, where you invest your time, where you invest your money, make the ROI on it is exponential. And yes, Charles, we'd love items donated to the silent auction. We would love that. And like what everyone was saying, is what I hope you took away from, and I'm going to give panelists like 20 seconds each to just say one little closing item. My closing item is everything you do matters, and your life matters, and your life matters and can make a huge impact in the world just by small things. So I'll let everyone else kind of close out with their one thing. Stephanie.
Oh, I was really on the spot. I had nothing to think of. I mean, I just think I'm just like honored that all of you guys came here today, and just, you know, something that Kristin says to us all the time, like you can do hard things. And even if it is just having that hard conversation, it's not something we want to talk about. Nobody wants to sit around and talk about human trafficking. But if we do talk about human trafficking and we do start to address the issue of demand, then we will start to reduce the issue of supply, which means that we can start to reduce, we can start to really make an impact in human trafficking. So let's just have these hard conversations. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. That's what I want you guys to take away. Let's have these conversations.
Awesome. Erin?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for being a part. You've already chosen to do something just by being here today. So thank you for that. And I would just leave you with, you matter and your story matters.
Renata?
And I think I just want to say thank you for everyone who came today, because even like this right here like directly impacts us, because it gives me a chance to like share my story and educate and tell people what it's like. And I always leave these types of panels feeling empowered and knowing that people care. The fact that over 100 of you showed up here today, like that's your first step of taking a chance. And so I really encourage a lot of you to just support Rethreaded, and support support your community. I feel like the biggest vulnerability is always the loss of community. And so if you have that community, like stick with it, love on your people well, check on your neighbors, check on your friend if they're going through divorces or whatever they're going through, cancer, anything like that, check on them and love on them.
And Lakeisha?
And me. So Renata, I'm happy you got your driver's license, no speeding. So I just really appreciate the opportunity, and I represent so many different police officers. So I'm representing law enforcement today and so many people. I was just blessed to sit here today, but I represent so many different officers that are out here every day, just trying to make a difference and protect you all. So what I would say also to the survivors, that I see you. I'm so inspired, and with this trauma, it's always a continuous healing. So hearing your stories kind of added an extra layer of healing over my heart. So thank you so much, and God bless you, Kristin.
And thank you guys. Thank you, panelists, for your honesty and your wisdom and your just educating us. And thank you for guys who attended. We recorded this, so I'm sure we're going to be making it public, and you can share. And thank you guys so much for joining us and participating. It was awesome. That's all we got. I don't know what to do next, Priscilla. Bye, everyone.
I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you, everybody.
And we can stay on, can't we? We'll stay on the panel. I guess we'll leave. Okay.